Well, hey all, and welcome back. So today we have a new upgrade kit for Combiner Wars Bruticus, and it is the Transform Dreamwave TCW-01. This is the new upgrade kit for Bruticus. As you can see here, I already have the Perfect Effects set on my Bruticus, and I have been mostly happy with it. Other than not being able to hold the Shockwave without the upgrade kit, the additional upgrade kit, I've actually been pretty happy with it. I think he looks pretty good as is. Not perfect, but pretty good. Now, on that note, I saw this TDW kit, and I pre-ordered it when it first came out, and it took so long that I'm like, there's no way this is ever going to get produced, so I canceled my pre-order. Now, it suddenly, out of nowhere, released, and then I jumped on it and reordered it right away. So here we have it. Talk about the box quickly. Nice crisp printing as far as the logo goes, reminiscent of the old Transformer logo. My only gripe is they have this nice line art here, and what they had done is looks like they did a filter on parts of it that might have looked good on screen. They added a glow effect, but it didn't translate well in the printing. Not a big deal, but from a design standpoint, I'm not keen on that one decision there. I think had they left it one tone all the way through, it would have been better. Then on the back, we have the actual thing that's in the package, as well as a little warning here, and that's really all there is to the box. So let's put that aside. Now inside the box, we have multiple things. We have instructions. Actually, this is a warning sheet that tells you about the chest transformation, what not to do to avoid damage. Then we have instructions, as well as the part naming, and then we have the kit itself. And it is kind of interesting because you have part of a clamshell, and then they taped a sheet of plastic underneath it. So that is maybe not the nicest way to pack things, but it's fine if it gets here safely. Now you have noticed some of the things have kind of shifted around the package. Not a big deal, but yeah, it's something just to take note of when you get it. Now, one reason I almost did not order this kit as soon as it came out was they had shown it with the United colors, and of course I have the US version, the Combiner Wars version, and I was afraid it won't match. However, they included additional parts that match the plastic for the Combiner Wars version. So, it should work well enough. Or at least we're going to find out. So let me go ahead and get this open. I'm going to show you guys how to install it, compare it to both the original setup and the Perfect Effects setup, and we'll see if it's worthy of our collection. Alright, so to start things off, go ahead and warn you guys, I had already done this, filmed it, and now I'm filming it again because I sort of learned as I went. And there's some things I've got to warn you about. Some things I did not discover until I got to them. Now, to start off with, looking at the instructions here, they kind of stink. The contrast is a little bit, there's not a lot of contrast in the images, so they're a little bit hard to distinguish some of the things. And I'm going to teach you a little bit about how to read some things. Now, first off, the most important, so you can get this right, is the way they're showing this leg section here is like this, the way I have him configured. They have it as the front, and the legs are turned back. So you can figure out better which joint goes with which leg. And they show you an illustration that's not the best illustration, but what you can figure out is that it's supposed to be transformed like this. You can see the screw hole there, you can see this shape here, and this is pivoted this way. Now, I had thought I originally had done the left leg, but after I had taken it apart, I actually had done the opposite one. So I had to take it apart so I can use this one. Now, while I have it apart, I'm going to show you guys the comparison between the Hasbro joint. Now, the Hasbro joint is a little bit more robust. It's a thicker plastic, uses pins. This uses some sort of mushroom peg system, or not even mushroom peg, it is some sort of expanding peg as resistance. It's squeaky. I don't know how strong this plastic is and how well this is going to hold up over time, so keep your old pieces in case you ever have to go back. Another bit of warning, something that's also very important. On these instructions, they show you a transformation of the chest and how not to do it to cause breakage. This is a very important indication right here because rather than using English or any other characters, they are using these little lightning bolt symbols to identify breakage. This relates to this. This is in the instructions, and this is a part that I was not aware of. This may turn a lot of people off from this kit immediately. So, be warned. When you look at these illustrations here, you take apart the leg, these lightning bolts are right here. The reason they're right here is because on this figure, so you've got these 3 screws you take apart. There is a peg in the knee that is glued. It will break. It has to break to open up. That is warning you that you're going to break it. So you have been warned by me, you will have to break the peg of this figure to use this kit. So on that note, I took out the 3 screws here, used my screwdriver here. You make sure you have a screwdriver that has a very square head that fits the screws very flushly. The Hasbro screws are very soft metal on the top, and the heads will strip. So when you take them out, make sure your screwdriver is flush, make sure it fits, and make sure you push a lot of pressure towards it and slowly turn. Because if you don't, you will damage the heads. So be warned on that as well. And if you do that, then of course the kit will not function, because if you can't take the legs apart, you can't use the kit. Or at least this portion of the kit. So that's some heavy warning right there. But now that I've got this apart, figured out which one it actually goes for, you can see on the illustration that it goes like this. So for this particular leg. And once you get the first one figured out, it's not so bad. So what you've got to do then is sort of do a little bit of wedging and get their new piece on the peg in there. And it's a nice tight fit, and so you just sort of work it back and forth until it fits flush. And this one is actually a little harder than the other one. So just work it on there. Okay, it's going. Okay, so here's where that breaking a peg is a concern. So now we've got that together. We're going to put the 3 screws back in, but there's going to be nothing on the knee. So what I would suggest, unless you think you might take this apart again, is to put some glue on that old peg, because I do not know how well these screws are going to keep things flush. So I'm going to go ahead and put the screws back in. And one thing that's nice about these screwdrivers, you see this head on here that twists? When you lay it against your hand, you can actually get some faster turns in. Now, like I said, same thing with this. Now I'm using this screwdriver just to sort of get the screw in there, but I'm going to use my other one with the more square head that fits the screws better to torque it down. And you don't want to over torque it either. On that note, if you do not own a screwdriver that does not fit these well, don't attempt. Just take your figure to a hardware store and pick up a screwdriver. It might even be better to go to an electronics store to get a screwdriver like this, and find one that fits the heads perfectly. Because if you're going to get this, you're going to want something that does that. Especially if you get other toys, you want something that works well with taking toys apart for some of these future upgrade kits just from other companies. So I've got that in there. Take your screwdriver, make sure it's nice and tight. Now you can see as I'm tightening there, we're getting a little bit of a split at the top. So that is a side effect of this kit. So you have been warned about that. See, everything's nice and tight. And it's not the end of the world. It's not a huge gap, but there is more of a gap there than there was, just because it was very tight before the way Hasbro glued it. So now, the next step what we have to do, we have that in there. We need to take this apart. Now, there's 3 screws. We've got a screw here on the one joint. And now it's actually pretty easy to take off. These are nicer screws than what I used on Hasbro's figure. And that little spring for the ratchet helps. I leave that in there so you know which one that belongs to. Pull this out, keep the position right. So put the leg up the way you have it set up. Yep, so just prop it there. And then we have to take out 2 more screws. And we'll take out those screws, and then we'll be able to put this over the mushroom peg. Alright, so we can pop this open. It takes a little bit of wedging. It's on there nice and firm. And you can see the inner workings of the other setup. And then we're just going to slide it over that mushroom peg. Alright, and then we can screw everything back together. But like I said, this figure will not be for everyone, considering there is a little bit more work involved. So then we can take that and take our other piece, our ratchet. Okay, so that spring's awfully firm, so you're going to have to give it a little bit of force to put together. Yeah, I'm going to take the screw out. Actually, the screw might help. Let's see if we can use the screw to tighten it down. And that actually works. So, just get the screw lined up and then tighten the screw down, and then you don't have to try to fight it with your fingers. So there, we still have our nice strong ratchet. And then we push the leg in. So to show the difference between the two, so we'll rotate that back out and show you what the legs now look like. So now we have this slightly beefier leg. Now, I don't know exactly how the United looks, but it does not match the paint of the Combiner Wars version. So that is another thing to be aware of. It's not horrible, but it is something to be aware of as far as that. But it does make the thigh a bit heavier, and as well as tighter, and just seem a little bit more robust. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other side, and then we'll jump to the next step. And now that we have the legs finished for Onslaught, you can see the new design here. And we'll go over that a little bit more after we're done. We need to still do the rest of him. And what we're going to start with is this back piece. So let's go ahead and fold that up so we can get access to the Bruticus head, which you can see here. And their instructions simply say, well, actually, if I just looked at their instructions and did that, I would have popped the head off. There's actually a screw in there. And that is something that is essential in graphics communication that the average person may not think of, is just how symbols communicate certain actions. And I feel like the arrows they use there are saying, oh, just pop it on and off. But in reality, they're relying on the image of the screw there to tell you, okay, we need to pop that off. So that is sort of one of the differences between what you might see with a graphic designer and just a person who knows how to use software. Now, head pops off pretty easily once you get that open. You can see the inside there, the little red eyes and the face mask. And this is a pretty decent looking head as is. Now, this is the replacement head, which is so much better. Nice sharp face mask there, very reflective, nice red eyes, some nice molded details, nice silver painted color. It is a very sharp head. And just like this one, there is a screw on the back. And we'll just remove that screw. The antennae here are a little bit thinner and higher up off the head, so I would be careful with those. That could be a piece of wrist breakage. And actually, you know what? Even though I am trying to pop it off, if you look at the design here, this is not enclosed. So we actually might be able to just pop this on without having to do the screw. So, yep, it simply just pops on. It doesn't give a nice good click that you might expect from such a thing, but it's still not bad. So we'll go ahead and put that screw back in there because that was unnecessary. And you can actually see there's a multitude, it kind of falls off. There's a multitude of joints here. This joint is actually kind of floating separate in here. I think, I mean, it doesn't really click on there, it just slides on. And you have a up and down movement thanks to that, and then the ball joint does that. But that is something that you can easily pop on and off. And out of curiosity, let's see how easily the piece goes about over it. And here's one instance you're definitely going to have to watch out for breakage of those antennae, is right here. Just because they seem a little bit higher up, and you got to get just the right angle when you transform it. Now it does clear it, but you do need to make sure it's right. But yeah, this head is a little looser on the neck because of that up and down movement. Not the end of the world. It is a nicer looking head, but it is something to be aware of. Now for the next part, we have this cod piece right here, and we're just going to pop it out like so. So we have this piece here. So yeah, let's look at the difference of these two. This is the original, and this is the new one. Nice and shiny and a bit bigger with moving plate armor as well as this. Now this part here is the United Blue, and this does not have a replacement piece. So I am curious to how this hides away in the other modes. It may be an eyesore. We'll have yet to see. But it's simply, you've got a little section here, goes on where the other one went. And that, it has sort of this sliding movement, but it's not the firmest connection. So just beware. It goes on there pretty easily, but it is not the firmest connection. So that is a little concerning. It might be a little floppy in some of the modes, but yeah, it goes on pretty easily though. Now looking at these directions, like you can see here what we're trying to do, and it is just not the greatest. What it looks like is we're trying to get this to form around somehow, and I'm going to leave it alone for the moment. But the next part we're going to try to do are these legs. And as you can see, here's the United colors. Here's the ones that had come for the Combiner Wars version. And it might be an alright contrast to use these. And they're quite simple. Literally all we're going to do here, you can see what it looks like on the inside. The blue does stand out a bit too much. Doesn't look so sharp. So we'll go back and use the ones that's supposed to go with it. And they just simply snap on. And you can see the vents there. Let's see if I can do this with both hands. So you've got this is our sort of hinged piece. It'll go on, and then you'll press it into, it looks like it goes over the fender. So over the fender, line it up, and then the two vents here, the two steps, it should clip into as well. There we go. Now it does not seem to clip on as solid as I'd like. It does fit there, and maybe it's not supposed to go completely flush. It would have been nice if it did. But yeah, it looks like there's actually a riser here. So it does not go completely flush. It does add some nice bulk to his legs though. Go ahead and add the other one. Okay, so push it in there. There. Snaps right on. Alright, so we can pop this wool back in and get that leg rotated. And we do have our beefier legs now. Goes with the new thighs a little bit better. So here you can see the difference between the two onslaughts after they're put together. And he does look a little bit nicer. The thicker legs, as well as just a little bit of bulk on his back. I do prefer that, but for what we gain in what seems to be a little bit of bulk and posability, we're losing in playability, especially in the legs, because the simplified legs that come in the original release are just a little bit easier to mess with as far as getting a pose and standing him up. There are so many joints going on in these thighs now. It's a little bit tricky to sort of get things lined up right. I mean, you can actually put it in a way where he looks bow-legged and the legs just don't really go straight. And so you're not really getting the use of that those feet slant like you would like. You could mess with it and you can push things around till you get there, and you will get there, but it does lose a little bit of the play factor just because it's a little bit slower process to adjust things because there's so many different joints that are being affected. Not a big deal because this becomes more of a collector's figure rather than just a toy, but it is something to be aware of with your figure. So now, let's start looking at some of these things that come with this. And what we're going to do here, I want to compare this directly with the Bruticus kit, as well as the original parts. Now, if you remember, these are the original hands and feet that came with the release. They're very simple. They're somewhat clever, but there's not a whole lot to them. Not a whole lot of posability, but they do look all right. At least the hands do. The feet didn't look very great with this figure. Then we have the Perfect Effect version, which was a nice color. It really suited the figure. It added some ankle tilt to it, and which gave it the ability to have a nicer stance. And these were a great upgrade as far as feet went. Now, when we look at the new feet, we can see they're a little bit shorter. The length is actually a little bit less, but they are flatter feet. And what stands out to me about these, and that's what sort of made me interested in this kit, is if you look at some of the Japanese illustrations, like in fan art and stuff like that, or even some of the Hasbro Japanese art books, it reminds me of that style somehow. And I thought that was kind of cool. Now, what we have here, it seems like there's a nice ankle tilt, ratchet forward and back, because I'll tell you this, these are somewhat firm, but they're still loose enough to where it's kind of hard to get a good pose with them. But as a foot, this already looks pretty cool. Now on the hands, we saw the hand here, as well as the foot mode, which wasn't very good. And then we have our Perfect Effect hand, which is a really nice hand. This is a redesigned version of the original hands with nice beefier fingers, and it was a good looking hand. However, unless you bought their add-on kit, you could not use the Shockwave at a good angle anyway. And the new hands, which from the pictures I actually expected to be bigger, are not. They're actually a smaller hand. They don't have that metallic coating either. They're more of a just plain plastic gray. But they are a nice looking hand, and if you look, they have a lot of posability. The fingers move left and right. I mean, you can do all kinds of different grips on them. Thumb's got full movement, where this one, you just had the full movement in the thumb and then just the fingers posed. Now, these fingers probably are a little bit more, they will have a little bit better friction, so I think they will hold things better, but these are more versatile. And they, of course, they have the built-in weapons. They do easily transform, and it might be a little too easily. We'll have yet to see on that. And if you look at the details on here, we've got machine guns on the top of the hands, and each finger, the tip of it, has a little machine gun turret. So they are gun hands. These were as well. These were weapon hands, but when they were in hand mode, they were just hands. So that's sort of the difference in those parts so far. And then in addition, we have this chest piece that is a weapon as well. And then we have these add-ons for the cannons. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and throw each of these into a configuration as far as the weapon modes with the robots, just to show you a comparison of the two, and that gives you an idea of where they stand in that respect. So here we have our new Onslaught and our old Onslaught all armored up with a couple of the Combaticons using the new DW weapon set as well as the old Perfect Effect weapon set. Now, I'm going to show you how this works, and they did some clever things here, but there's still a couple issues. So as you can see here, the Perfect Effect weapons are actually quite nice. They have this nice painted silver. They're very simple. The feet just split, fold back, handles come out, then you've got weapons. The hands were probably the least convincing part, and the way this works is the hands would split, two of the fingers roll to the back, and then the three fingers rolled up here together, and so you have this one on the top, which might kind of act as a sight, and then these two fingers forward. It was a little more convincing with the first release of the set, but these better looking hands make less convincing weapons. So on that note, let's talk about what we have here. So we've got him with the new gun, and the way it works is it's quite simple. Now, you literally just So you've got the hand like this, you literally just fold it, and it's done. So you've got the fingers, and you might have to do a little bit of tweaking here, but it's pretty much just fold and set. And you've got a set of turrets on the side, you have the turret fingers, and then you have this top part, when it's lined up, the thumb makes a better looking sight. Now of course, it doesn't seem to be as sturdy, at least is setting up, but it is a nicer looking gun. And then the back here, this just turns into the handle. But I do think this is a really nice idea for a gun, hand-wise, compared to the Perfect Effects version. It is a little bit more fidgety, as you can see here, but aesthetically, it does look better. Now the next part, you can see these other set of weapons here, and this is a clever bit of transformation. So what we're going to do, first what we're going to do, you got to fold these out, and then you're able to remove that. This peg comes out, and this has two forms here. You can either pop the peg out, and the peg is pretty tight to get out, and then use this entire piece as a weapon, or this comes out like I have it there, and then you have another gun that you can set on vehicle mode or whatever. Now in his hand, he doesn't hold it as a very straight angle because of the bit on the back of his hand. However, it is okay with that. It isn't as nice as the Perfect Effect version, but it is cool to have all that functionality. So we've got this configuration for this, but if you take this off, and you've got this section here, it is a shield, and actually has a spot here for a sticker if you want to put the emblem on there. And when you put this back together, it is actually even better looking shield. Now the issue with this shield, so we've got a peg down here, and then we have that would be used for the weapon mode, but this other peg here that's actually the ankle peg that's used in the foot transformation, or the foot form, is a little large. And I want to say that it's really too large for the hands. I believe you're going to have some stress by using it. Even fitting it inside the post here for using this foot, it requires a bit of force. Now it's going to be a lot more sturdy and stay put better than the Perfect Effect version, but it is going to serve, but it will not serve as well in its weapon form just because of how this is in relation to the hole for the hands. So I have been able to fit on him, but keep in mind I'm using the lower peg here, and that lower peg, you know, it looks fine from the front because you can't tell how his arm's bent, but when you see here he's using this lower peg because it fits better, and it's not as honestly it doesn't look as good. So the note about that, the hand makes a nice weapon in that mode. The shield is pretty cool, though the peg size, which would be more visually optimal to hold it, is a little too big. This turret here, on its own, isn't great, but when using the lower section of the shield, it is a nicer gun. But the feet are clever as far as how they transform. I can appreciate that, but in that respect, I think when it comes to weapons, the Perfect Effects set does work a little bit better. Even though you only have two weapons, it just works a little bit better, and the final product looks a little nicer, because of course these are unpainted and whatnot. And just quickly, I want to go over the vehicle mode. So this is the original vehicle mode. We had a little gap here, but overall, it was pretty decent looking. Head hid away up here. We had the turrets. I thought it was alright as is. Now, with the new one, I don't have it fully formed here because I want to show you what's changed. So we still have a gap here. If you notice, the gap is a wee bit larger. And the way this works is these extra joints down here collapse and allow you to get the thighs further in there. So it does maintain a very similar gap. The other thing to notice, so I'm going to go ahead and put it on here. Now in the picture, it looks like they swapped these, but I don't like the idea of taking them off and swapping them. I think just rotating them as is a little bit better. And they just snap here on the wing, or on the original chest piece, and they sort of act to fill up the gap here. I mean, it doesn't cover it perfectly, but you can see here when we've got these two next to each other how it changes that. So what does stand out is the fact that we have these other colors here. We do have a purple, though it is different from the lights here. The cannons have those strange tips on them. I mean, sure, they are more menacing, but I would have rather had just completely new guns rather than just the tips. And of course, the other bit that stands out, so the codpiece here, you can see here, and these things don't really click into place. They rely on a lot of friction to be there. It is on that mount, but like I said, it is not super tight or anything. So we've got that, and then of course the blue United plastic there. And also, where these peg on the side of this now pegs into the blue plastic. But yeah, that gives you an idea of the vehicle modes. And as for the other ones, I'll go ahead and note, those are the same, but the weapon configurations I showed you before just leaves up to your imagination. Whatever way you want to take those other pieces and attach them to the other Combaticons is really up to you. So it's a neat to have the options, and this is not so far separated from the original mode that it just looks alien. It's not, I don't think, overly improved, but it does make use of all those parts. So the Combaticons are ready to go. We've got the arms, the legs, and now for the torso mode. And so to configure that, it is going to be a little bit differently than what we were used to. So what we're going to go ahead and do is start with putting the head in. And we're going to do a lot of the transformation more or less the same. So we've got this section here that's going to go on top of the arms. Same for this side. And everything snaps in nice and secure because that's how it was originally designed from Hasbro. And then for this, I'm going to rotate it around. Okay, so we've got that there. And put the head down, remove the guard. The head is nice looking. That is a really good head. Though I do wish that little section there was a little tighter, but that's still not the end of the world there. It's such a good looking head. So then we're going to move the new crotch section into place. And this is where things are going to be a little trickier. So we want to get the legs rotated. Oh, of course that piece falls off. So that's going to be a problem because, as I mentioned earlier, how loose that is. So we've got that section here, but it goes on pretty easily. I do wish that was sort of a permanent snap-on. And then the way we're going to get this to work, because there's these peg holes on the side here, get both of them the way they're supposed to be, because the legs are supposed to be, let me open this so you can see it, so the legs are supposed to bow like this for this part of it, and then of course this part is going to be rotated forward because the legs will no longer be the way they used to be. And what we have, so we have these tabs here, and this is something you have to be very delicate with, because even though this is a thicker bit of plastic than some of the other stuff, you're probably going to get a little scuffing on the silver, and you're going to risk breakage because this is going to lock the lower legs into place. So we move that there, get it inside the pegs, you get it just right, and you can get it in there. And then you can go on the other side. You do need to be careful with those because I do think that is going to be the weak point of this figure. But there you go, you've got that in there. And remember, these legs are going to be facing forward like this because of the new configuration. And then this is going to fold around the waist and create sort of this new waist. And that is, of course, a different color than the rest of it. And so what we can do here, I'm going to get this squeezed back up. So then we've got the legs, and we have the torso, almost complete. Now what I'm going to show you here before we go any further is sort of the new look where we're at. Now, I have not put the chest on yet because just from my experience in transforming this figure, I think it's better to do the chest last just because you've got this section that these block. So what I'm going to show you guys real quick is old torso versus new, and you can already see how much higher this one is thanks to these new joints. Also, the much more aggressive looking head. So this is already shaping up, as far as Bruticus form goes, to be a little cooler. So let me go ahead, let's go ahead and start assembling this guy. So we'll fold these up, and we're going to put the legs in. And here you can already see another issue. There is a ratchet in these legs, or in these ankles. And that ratchet is going to limit the amount of posability that you get. That is, I didn't think I would appreciate the ball joint more, but I do think the ball joint from the Perfect Effects feet is going to be a little bit better for posability. Now, once you start getting these legs spread out and kind of adjusting things, you should be able to get some really nice poses, but that ball joint does have a benefit in that respect, just because the clicks are so far apart. Alright, so now we can get the arms into place. And I'm using the configuration from the official Hasbro picks for Bruticus. So with that in place, now we can lock these shoulders with the original joints. And he is shaping up. Look pretty cool. Now we have this other part that does have a weapon mode. It just wasn't very strong. This is part of the chest piece, and when you take the peg off, you do have sort of this turret here, and this comes part here, and this will stay on the chest. It's just not very strong as a weapon. Visually, but it is a cool looking piece. So you can see the old chest here, and you have this groove in here, and what you'll do is lock it on top of that piece that juts out. So, and that does have a nice solid attachment point. And then we can take the other side, and the way it shows it in the instructions is that they should be able to stay on for part of the transformation. However, I find that it may not be the best setup, so I do take it off. Alright, so and then configuring this is where we first saw instructions on breakage. I'm going to just snap it together and push the peg in. If I can find it, there we go. And then we have, make sure everything's locked, the new chest piece. And we do have one last part to add on here. Now, the original rifles that he had on here, they go on the back of the shoulder cannons. Well, they have a new tip that goes on here. And the tip, honestly, doesn't go well with the original gun. I mean, the plastic is too different. Maybe if you gave this a coat of the same kind of silver, it'd look better. But it just looks like you've stuck something on there. That is, as a weapon, in individual mode, it's not great. But I think it's going to work pretty well for the cannons. So we'll rotate this behind. And they'll go on the same way you would do with the regular release. So we'll stick those handles in there, and then we can rotate that up. And the same goes for here. We'll push that in, rotate that up, and now we can get this guy back and see what the final combined form looks like. Now in combined mode, he is awesome looking. I mean, even with all the flaws that we ran across, he is awesome looking. There is a little bit of a gap on the chest piece. It can only be held together so tight. It has a very primitive way of locking. But overall, I mean, the knees are hid well. He's taller. Those cannons look really cool coming off his back. He is great looking in Gestalt mode. It is a very nicely done design. I think this really improves it over some other kits. Now, one of the things to note here, I mentioned earlier that the ratchets and the ankles were a little problematic because in the knees you have a big ratchet, in the ankles you have a big ratchet, the hips a slightly smaller ratchet, but even so, it's kind of hard to really get those in the most optimal position, so you have to rely on those joints that are in the hips here to sort of get the legs in a straight position so that the torso, a good balanced look as it's standing there. I do think it does look very sharp. We can turn it around real quick and you guys can see from behind. And it's okay looking back there, but that's mostly due to Hasbro's design work, where you have the gaps as well as sort of this weaker gun looking part. It still looks pretty good. Now, there's one more trick up his sleeve for weapon modes, and you may have seen pictures already, but that same hand weapon mode that I'd mentioned earlier is part of his gimmick in combine mode. So you simply just, see, rotate the hand around, and then he has a gun hand, which is pretty cool. And you can see that from the side. That is pretty sharp. I think that's a nice, clever addition. Even though these are a weapon on their own, I think it's cool that they're configured to act that way in hand mode. Now what I want to do real quick, I want to take him in the mode he's in now and give you guys some side-by-side comparisons of the original configuration, the Perfect Effect configuration, as well as some alternate mix and matches. So here first we have him with the original combined mode that Hasbro intended. And you can see he's taller, there's extra armor. It is much better looking, much more dynamic looking. Now here he is with the Perfect Effects mode. I'll call this configuration A because there's another configuration that's a little closer to the new mode that I think works. This configuration does look good. I think he's very nice and chunky, still posable. I think it's still sharp. It's solid. This is a great option if you don't have the Perfect Effect already, which if you go back to my reviews, I have reviewed him. And so here we have configuration B, where you turn the legs. You kind of have to put them at a wider stance just because there's interference, and it does look a little bit better with the more narrow thighs. Still a great option, but yeah, you can see between the two which one you prefer. Now let's mix and match. Here is the main body armor with the Perfect Effect feet and hands. Now that you've seen all those modes, I just sort of want to wrap this up and show you guys the final bit. One question you may have had is if he can use Shockwave. He does have the same problem the Perfect Effect hands have, so it would hold it at an angle. You can get his fingers wrapped around there, but like I said, the fingers aren't as strong as they are with the other one, and of course the stock here, or the handle, is not very long. So, unfortunately, these hands also are not really an option when it comes to the Shockwave weapon. My final thoughts on this, as a combined mode, very cool looking. I think if you're going to leave it on the shelf, not mess with it, and be willing to take the risk with the modification, I think it looks solid. Even with this united color for the waist, it helps kind of break up the torso. This different colored chest piece, I like that as well. There's a lot of nice colors going on here. I think it's very sharp as that. Now, in the weapon mode that we saw earlier, not near as strong as Perfect Effects. Even as hands and feet, they're not near as strong as Perfect Effect, but they do have a nice gimmick. For the price point, for what you're getting, if you even don't do the leg mod, if you consider this really sharp looking head and a set of hands and feet, as well as the new guns, for 45 bucks, which is what it's going for right now, that's not a bad price for the upgrade kit. If you compare it to the price of, say, the Perfect Effect one. If you're just looking to upgrade to Bruticus, that is a good price point. However, if you don't like the head and you just want hands and feet, I would probably suggest the Perfect Effect ones. I think those are going to better suit most people. But if you want the look of this, if you want to have this extra armored up, more third-party looking Bruticus, and you're willing to take the risk of messing with the legs on this, I do think this is a very solid upgrade. So anyway, so let us know down below in the comments if you prefer this one, Perfect Effect, or the way Hasbro originally designed it. And don't forget to let us know if this is worthy of your collection. So anyway, thanks for watching, make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you all next time.